Hi, I'm George Pearson, and this is a tutorial video for Adobe's Photoshop program. You'll find links in the description for any materials used in this video, and of course don't forget to subscribe, like, and also share the video. I really appreciate that. Okay, let's go ahead and get into the video. In this Photoshop video, we're going to be making this picture of a hand drawing a girl here. Now it's pretty straightforward, but there are a lot of techniques involved in this. We're starting off with a photograph of a girl. Let me just show you that right there. Starting off with our photograph, and everything is built around that. We'll be converting that photograph into a pencil sketch look, putting that onto a piece of paper, giving the paper a texture, curl paper edge, putting it into perspective, drop shadow, giving it a new background, and then placing a hand, drawing that as our last step. So a lot of things involved in this, but it's actually pretty straightforward. You should have no problem at all being able to recreate this look. Now we're going to be starting off with our picture right here. The first thing we want to do on our basic photo image is to convert this to that pencil sketch effect. Now this is an old technique. It's been around for a long time, but it works out very, very well for this kind of video tutorial. The first thing you want to do is you want to copy this layer, make a duplicate. So go here to your background, drag that down to the new layer button, just like that, and get a duplicate. I always do this. It's my standard procedure so that I won't accidentally mess up my picture. If I do make a mistake, I can always go back to my original. That easy to do. Okay, so we have our basic layer here. We're now going to remove the color out of this image. We'll do that by desaturating. You can do this any way you want. You just want to remove the color from the image. So go up here to Image, Adjustments. Easiest way is just to do black and white, like that. And that just removes the color values from the image. Other ways of doing this, let's just cover these very, very quickly. You could, if you wanted to, do a hue saturation and then pull saturation down to 0. Does the same thing, simply removing the color values from the image. Okay, so back up here again. One thing you don't want to do is change the mode to indexed or grayscale. Don't do that, because that changes everything, and then we can't do any of our color work down the road here. So adjustments, we'll do it the easy way, black and white, and I'll just leave that at the default settings and choose OK. There you go. There's our black and white image. All right, now I want to make a copy of this layer. So let's drag this down to the new layer button, just like that. So I have two copies, two black and whites. On the top one up here, we're going to do a blend of this layer into this layer. I'm just going to blend these together. There are blending modes right there, and come down to color dodge. What you should get is something kind of along the lines like this. You're getting kind of a bit of a pencil sketch kind of a look. Now we'll take this one step further. We're not done yet. This is just an in-between stage. We're not going to be using this. It's just an in-between stage. Now we want to take this and invert this layer, make this a negative of this layer. So Image, Adjustments, and Invert. There you go. So you get a negative. Very important on that step and on that sequence. First do your blending mode, color dodge, and then make a negative of that by inverting that. And you'll see nothing on the page. That's perfectly fine because this is blocking out that. We're now going to be bringing the image back in again by blurring this negative image. And we'll do that with the Gaussian blur. So blur, Gaussian blur, my personal favorite. Here you go. In here, you can now come in and adjust the amount of blur to get the pencil sketch quality that you want. The further the blur goes, the more realistic it looks. The lower the blur, the more it looks like a pencil sketch. Now I'm going to be using something right around in here, somewhere around 86, maybe 90 pixels. In there someplace. That's pretty good. Okay, choose OK. So there's the first step. We're converting the image to a pencil sketch effect. Okay, now we want to take this and I want to merge this together onto a new layer. So this is our in-between step. We're going to be doing a couple of these in-between steps. And the technique I use on this is a keyboard shortcut. It's Control, Alt, Shift, and then hit the E key. Let me just show you that. Just come up here, make sure your background layer is hidden. Just looking at these two layers. So it's the Control, Shift, Alt, and the E key. And what that does is it takes these layers, merges these together onto a new layer up here. We can now hide those layers. We're done with those layers. We're now up to this layer. So that's our next step. Let me just bring that keyboard shortcut up so you can see that. There we go. Control, Alt, Shift, and the E key. Upper or lowercase, doesn't matter. Command, Option, Shift, E key on the Mac. Great little keyboard shortcut. I tend to use this one a lot. This is a good one to memorize. Okay, so there we go. That's our keyboard shortcut. And that combines these layers into a new layer up here. Okay, so far so good. Now we're going to place this onto some paper. We'll need our paper color. So let's come down just below that layer into a new layer right underneath of that. This is going to be our paper layer, our paper color layer. I'll go over here to our colors. I'll bring this up. Now the color I used is right here, and it's EBE2CC in case you want to match that exactly. But it's just kind of a light tan. There's some right down here in the middle of the orange range in there, a little bit kind of a rusty orange in there. And way over here on the light side, not full saturation, that's over here. Not full desaturation, not clear to the top. Just right up right here someplace. It's about a sixth of the way in. But somewhere around here, just kind of a nice light tan, not a real bright tan, but you can change the color, make any color that you want, but I recommend staying over in this range over here to keep it fairly soft looking, kind of a drawn paper color. So there's our color, and then simply grab the paint bucket and click on fill, and it fills that layer with that color. We now need to merge this picture onto this layer. This is why we did that merge down here, so I have this as a single layer. So we're going to merge this layer down to this layer. And we're going to be doing that again with a blending mode up here, and come down to linear burn. There we go. And that just burns that layer into this bottom layer here. So it kind of combines the layers, and it looks as if it's been drawn on that sheet of paper. And notice there's some problems in here. We have some texture on there. This is the wall texture behind the model's head. We'll clean that up, and then we're going to do another merge on these. But let's first do our cleanup. Make sure on the model page right there, the model layer, and take the eraser. And mine's at a pretty good size. It's a soft edge, 156 right now. It's a pretty large size. Remember, all of my sizes here, these are all based upon the image picture original size. Everything's kind of based on that. I'm just going to go through here and erase all this stuff out. And what I'm doing is I'm erasing off of this layer here. And then, of course, we're just seeing that tan in behind. And just kind of erase like that. Just kind of clean that up. Don't go too close to the edge of the hair. You can leave a little bit of that up there to help define that top edge of the hair. And just kind of clean that out. There we go. Doesn't need to be perfect. It is a pencil sketch after all. And good artists always leave a little bit of a sloppiness on their picture. Makes it look a bit more realistic. You can see the hand-done quality if it's a little bit messy. So you want to have some of that in there. Okay, there we go. So that cleans that up. Now we're going to merge these two together. Same trick. We want to have these two layers visible, everything else hidden. Click on your top layer, and then the Shift, Control, Alt, and E, and that merges those two layers together. Let's go ahead and hide those. We're now up to this layer. At this point, we can come in and put in a background to put this on, put this above. So we'll get that out of the way right now. I'll come way down here where it says background, just to keep things kind of obvious, right above the background. New layer, there we go. Let's set this at a medium and light gray. Let's hide that layer for a second. So I'll put our colors back to their defaults. Click on the foreground color. Choose kind of a medium. I'd say, about halfway up is fine. It doesn't need to be exact. That's our foreground color. And then about a third of the way up, just like that. Go over here to the gradient tool, and this just pulls down. We can adjust this later on if it's not quite what we want. This is just a beginning to give us some kind of background in here. And you'll see why I want the background in just a minute. Okay, here's our foreground picture. Now I want to get rid of this excess stuff around the face, just leaving the face in here. So let's grab our, actually I'm going to start off with just some guidelines, and this kind of visualize where this would look nice as a drawing, kind of like that. A little bit of space left and right side, fairly tight, not right up against the head. You want out, you want some space out here, some breathing room. And then we're going to select this area. So grab the rectangular marquee tool, come right up here to the top, and right on that guideline, and then drag down to the bottom and over to this guideline. Okay, that's now selected. Let's now invert that selection. So select and inverse. And then just hit the delete key. And you know what? I was on the wrong layer. Let me just undo. I do that sometimes. Okay, that's the right layer. Delete key. There we go. And we can then deselect that. We can also get rid of those guides. So view, clear guides. Okay, that gives us our image sitting here on top of that background. Now I want to come in and let's find a spot about a quarter of the way in on this image. So let's pull a guideline in here right about halfway, and then another guideline right in between those two, like that. That gives me a quarter up here. So the same thing, I can kind of match that visually. So you have a basic square shape right in there. That's what we're looking for. Square shape at about a quarter of the picture. So I divided the picture in half, divided that half in half, and then matched that space with that one. It gives me a square right there. Back to the rectangular marquee tool. Again, right on this line right here, guideline, let's drag down to that one, and just to the side here. There we go. Now I want to come in here and actually put in a gradient in here. I want more of a gradient this time, a more dramatic gradient. So let's change our colors to our default colors. There we go. And back to the gradient, and that should be like that. We should have our default colors up there, foreground to background. That's what you want. So clicking down here, and then go straight up and come way out here somewhere, foreground to background. If that's too much, you know, a little lighter up there, don't go quite as far. Something like that, and then let's deselect that. We can now get rid of our guides. View, clear guides. There we go. Okay, now we want to bend this corner over so it hides this dark part down here. So I want to get rid of that dark part. And that's just kind of a visual trick. So you're on that layer still. Edit, transform, and warp right there. That divides that layer, as you can see here, divides it up into 9 parts, into thirds. Simply grab this upper right hand corner and drag that down until it begins to spin over like that, and it hides that black part. Now we can pull these edges here up, and we can pull these edges up a little bit. And so we can kind of get our nice corner bent. I'm not going to take it quite so far. I think maybe over here someplace might look nice. We'll clean that little edge up in just a bit here. So it's kind of creating our bent corner right in there. And I think that looks pretty good. You don't want to warp the image itself too much. think that's all right. It's really more about the curve right here, the corner that I'm caring about. Also don't want to go too far into the image. It looks a little bit odd. Okay, just about like that. Then we'll take care of that in just a second. Okay, check mark. There we go. There's our bent corner. A little bit of this darkness in there. We need to get rid of that. So this is going to be a little bit of hand editing in here. There we go. Grab the eyedropper tool and click on your foreground color. Right there, that just selects that bit. Now I want to make a selection right along this edge here and out here, so we can then paint that out. You can do it by hand if you want to, but it's always better to make a careful selection first, because you can always fix your selection if you don't get it quite right. So I'm just going to come in here and just very carefully make a little selection here using my polygonal lasso tool. Just little short movements, keeping it very, very short, very, very small movements, and just follow along this curve. And then just come all the way down here, down to the end. And then just bring it out here just a little ways and come back to the beginning. Okay, there's our selection. I can now paint that out without worrying about hitting anything else. Okay, paintbrush. I'll bring my size down to about half of that, 45. That's pretty good. And let's just clean that black out of there. There we go. Okay, good enough. Let's deselect that. And let's zoom back out. Hold the Alt key down. There we go. Let's just fit that on the page here, fit on screen. Okay, so there's the picture, and there's our page curl. Now we want to put our texture into this picture. So we're going to texturize this next. Notice the only thing we have in here is the background and that piece showing. So let's add some texture on this. We'll be using a filter up here from the filter gallery. Bring that up, and there's one in here. I already have it up. It's called Texture, Texturizer, and I have mine set at Sandstone. And let's just zoom out a little bit here so you can see the effect. There you go. Now it looks rather rough here, rather serious, but that's okay. That's fine. You can bring the scaling down if you want to make it a little bit softer. You can bring the relief down and fade it out, but I have a better way of fading it out. So I want to have a good amount of texture here showing, and we'll then back off on that texture in the next step. So, texturizer, sandstone, and somewhere in there on that, that's okay. And there we go, there's a little texture. And so it also gets the back of the paper, that's fine, I want that. Okay, now this is too much texture, so I want to fade the texture out. This is one of the cool little tricks over here. Go to Edit and Fade Filter Gallery, and you get a slider control allowing you to fade the last filter that you did. So we can then pull this back and just soften up the effect of that texture until it looks nice. And something here I think looks pretty good. That's down 49%, maybe 45%. That looks real nice. There's enough texture, you can see the texture, but it's not so much that it looks fake or like a stuccoed wall. It looks like it's possibly a paper effect, and choose OK. Okay, there we go. We have our picture, we have our curled corner, we have our texture. Now we need to do some perspective adjustment on this thing and scale adjustment. So we'll first make it a little bit smaller than this so you can see our edges. So go up to Edit, and you can just do Free Transform if you want to. Grab the corner, hold the Shift key down, and let's just pull it in a little bit. So you can see our whole picture. There we go. Come just outside and give it a little bit of a rotation like that. That's pretty good. Doesn't matter exactly where it is. We'll be adjusting this a bit more in just a second. I'm going to back out just one notch here, Alt key, and there we go. So you can see our corners. We now need to put this into a perspective view. For that, I'm going to be using the Distort option. This allows me to grab any of these corners or sides and push them in where I want. I'm first going to pull this down a little bit, and I'm going to pull this one in a little bit, like that. Let's pull this in a little bit and that in a little bit. And pull that down. You can resize this as you want at this point. And you move it around till you get a nice angle on this. Something in there, that's okay. I'm going to rotate it back just a little bit in a second here. Let's go ahead and choose that one, and then we'll do a File, actually Edit rather. Here we go. Transform, Rotate. Let's just rotate this back around just a touch. That looks pretty good. Now a lot of this is just kind of visual feeling. You want to get it so it looks right. There's no real specifics on this. So to freeze transform, let's just increase the size of this just a bit so it fills our page up a little bit better. I don't want to go clear to the edges. If you go clear to the edge, you're going to lose the effect of this being a sheet of paper. So you want to stay away from those edges. There we go. Okay, it's kind of sitting there. I have a nice piece of paper on this. We now want to have a drop shadow in here. Now, because the curl is up here, I want to have the drop shadow mostly up here and on this side. Not very much down here at all, and no drop shadow on those sides. That'll give us that paper effect. If there's too much drop shadow down here, it'll look like it's floating. We don't want it actually floating. We want it kind of sitting on the surface. A real thin amount of drop shadow here, and mostly on the right-hand side. Okay, we're still on this layer up here. So let's just do our drop shadow layer, and layer style, drop shadow. Uncheck global light, so we have some adjustments. So there's a little thin there. That's fine. I want to have more on this side. So let's bring the angle around a little bit. So it's a little further up this way. And we can adjust our distance. See that? And a little more on my angle. Again, I want just right against the edge, right there. It's going to peek out of there in just a second. We come into size. Notice how the size softens that shadow up. And as I soften that up, I get a little more showing right down at that bottom edge, but it's mostly along this right side, and that's what we're looking for. You don't want to go too far or you lose the effect. You want it just to kind of soften that up in there. Okay, let's just adjust that angle just a hair more. There we go. Just a little thin amount showing here, and mostly on that side. Ideally, I could do the shadow so that it would be closer here, further away down here, and kind of over here. So it looks like this side is lifted up a little bit. You can do that in 3D, but we're not going to be getting or bothering with 3D on this video. We'll keep everything in 2D, giving us a fake 3D look. So you're going to match these settings. I had 21 for my distance, 32 for the size, and 176 for the angle. Everything else is left the same. And choose OK. So there we go. There's our sketch sitting on a background, and a little bit of drop shadow giving us that lifted effect, like it's being lifted up off the page. Okay, all we need to do now is to bring in the hand. Let's go back here. There we go. There's our hand picture. I'm just going to drag it out and float that. And let's grab that hand and pull that hand in. There we are, and we'll close that down. Obviously, it's upside down, so let's just flip that around. Transform, rotate 180. There we go. Let's now get this thing scaled properly. So I'm going to bring the opacity down to about there. And anywhere down in the 30s is fine. And let's adjust the size. Transform, scale. Hold down your Shift key. And let's bring that down so when it's sitting on the bottom of the page, the pencil is just up here, about middle of the chin. That's a good size for this picture. It looks like the picture is the right size of paper. Bring our opacity back up again. And there we go. So that's the hand. Now, we need to cut that hand out of here. Let's just set that in place. There's our scale. We'll zoom in on our hand. And I'll use my favorite trick in here for doing a fast selection. Make sure you can see the whole thing. There we go. Perfect. Okay, let's go over here. I'll grab the lasso tool. I'll start right up here and just begin drawing around this. Now, I'm not going to be right up against the hand, just a little ways out like this. And then across the bottom. And then back around this side, just doing a real loose, in close, but not in real tight. And we'll come around here and then back there, overlap, and there's my selection. Now, go up to Select and Refine Edge. See, there's my Refine Edge brush. You can see right there. Right now it's set at 68. That's fine. Leave all those settings as is. And then see the little plus sign in the middle of that? I want that plus sign outside of the hand. And then just kind of paint around the edge. And this is going to tell Photoshop where you want it to recheck the edge. Then recheck that and it will do that selection for you. It does a great job at doing this. Especially on a clean image like this. This is perfect. And we'll come down here and right on that edge. There you go, that takes care of that. Now those inside parts, I have to do those by hand. So let's take this and do a new layer with layer mask. Choose OK. There's our new layer with the layer mask. It hides the original layer. See, there it is hidden. Now we need to get rid of this bit here and that bit in there. And we'll do that on the mask side. White, as you can see here, white shows, black hides. So I want to paint black in those two areas on the mask side. Make sure you have those little white outlines there. Okay, let's zoom in real tight. There we go. That's good. Grab the polygonal lasso tool, a little more control. Kind of hard to see the finger here. Doesn't really matter. Just kind of fake it in there. This will look fine. You can see this edge, of course, so just come right down along the edge. You can see where it's kind of soft focus right there. Come just a hair into that soft focus edge where you want to be. And then finish that off right there. We have black as our foreground color. You can double check that. Just reset your colors. And black as foreground. Grab your paintbrush. Size is good. I'm painting black on the matte, so it's hiding that. And let's deselect. That's good. Let's scroll down. Same thing right here. It's a little bit right there, but it doesn't really show, so I'm not going to worry about that. Let's get this side in here. Same thing. Let's just make a careful little selection right along the edge of that finger, along the edge of the pencil, and right along the hand down here. Bring it around. Just little short movements and little clicks to get that selection made. There we go. Back to the paintbrush. Paint that in there and then deselect. That's done. Okay, back to our zoom tool. Hold the Alt key down and zoom out. Let's see how we look. That looks pretty good. Now I want to put a slight drop shadow underneath that hand to kind of help blend it in with the rest of the picture. So back to the image side here, and then layer style, drop shadow, uncheck use global light, and bring this around about where it was on the image we used here on the shadowing for the paper. So you see it just a little bit here, mostly over here. Bring our distance out a little bit. There we go. Bring your size out to soften that up, not too much. You want to kind of match the quality of this. Not as thick as this, but kind of matching the quality of that. And just kind of play around back and forth here a little bit. So something right about there looks pretty good. Now again, ideally on this, the shadow would technically be a little bit thinner right here, a little bit thicker down here because this is over a larger surface, but we're not going to be bothering with that kind of technicalities. This will look good for our picture. So my settings this time, 19 on the distance, 21 on the size, 173 on the angle, looks about right. Choose OK. And there we go. Let's go ahead and set this on fit on screen. There it is. So there's our hand drawing a picture onto that piece of paper. At this point you can make any adjustments you want. Of course you can change the background gradient, maybe a little bit darker at the top, lighter at the bottom, different color altogether. It's up to you, whatever you feel like doing. But there we go. That's how we can take a photograph and make it look like it's a drawing, and then make it look like the drawing is on actual paper, on art paper, and then on top of that, make it look like somebody's actually doing the drawing right there for us. So there you go. That's how to take a photograph and turn it into a drawing. Let me just show you the beginning picture again. I'll double click down here where it says background, OK. That just changes the background to a regular layer, and that allows me to move that to the top of my stack. So there's our original, and there's our finish. Again, original and our finish. Okay, there you go. How to turn a photograph, a portrait, into a drawing. Thank you for watching this special Photoshop photography project video. Don't forget to subscribe so that you will get first notice of new project videos in the future. Just click on this link right here where it says subscribe here. You can get all 12 project videos in this series along with 26 special videos demonstrating the tools and techniques that I used in these projects by clicking on this link right down here. And then thank you again for watching this